So first of all, the 7 grandfather teachings are our protocols for this entire forum. They are also the foundation of local Indigenous ways of life and a blueprint on how to live a good life and healthy life. So I want to first explain that wisdom is a gift from the Creator. It is to be used for the good of the people and when dealing with important matters such as these. Love, demonstrating love means that we must first love ourselves before we can show love. Those who are unable to demonstrate love in this way, those who are able to demonstrate love in this way are at peace with themselves. Respect develops when one takes time to establish a deeper relationship with the other. This concept of respect extends to all creation. In order to receive respect, one must give respect. Bravery. We must be brave in order to do the right thing, even if the consequences are unpleasant. It takes moral courage to be able to stand up for those things that are not right. Honesty. It takes bravery to be honest in our words and actions. One needs to be honest first and foremost with oneself. Practicing honesty with oneself makes it easier to be honest with others. Humility is to know your place in creation and to know that all forms of life are equally important. We need to show compassion, care, and concern for all of creation. And truth is to know all of these things, by Benton Benai, 1988. All of these teachings go hand in hand. It is important not to deceive yourself or others. So Chimegwech, for respecting and honoring those teachings as we work together. And also we will put a link to the chat if anyone would like to learn more about the 7 grandfather teachings, and that's where I spoke from. The resource that we will share with you is what I refer to in what I just said. Also, if one of our project staff would like to put in the chat, if anyone would like to learn more about the treaties, there is a good resource that Elder Shirley Williams shared with us. That would be excellent. Miigwech. Also, we have with us here this evening, Elder Shirley Williams. And Elder Shirley will be our forum's care elder, and she's available if you need any support navigating these potentially difficult topics. Elder Shirley is an Anishinaabemowin professor, consultant, translator, and author. She's also a residential school survivor and a storyteller and educator. We are very, very grateful for you, Elder Shirley, for being with us and providing this support for our participants in doing this work. Chimigwech. Now we will move into nope, I will stop sharing my screen and we can move into the next portion of our session. So first we have S. Ahmad, from Green Beacon, and she will be sharing with us a little bit about the theme of this topic, which is why an intersectional approach and Indigenous leadership is so important in this work. So I will begin sharing your presentation and you can now have the floor. Chimigwech S.
Thank you, Shaylin. I would like to begin today by acknowledging that I'm coming to you from the land that is the traditional home of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the neutral people. I acknowledge that it is my responsibility to learn about the past and work towards reconciliation in the present for a just future for all of our children. As we go through this presentation, it might be helpful for you to know that I am a brown woman, a visible religious minority, and a person with a hidden disability. So let's talk about today's topic on why an intersectional approach and Indigenous leadership are central to leaving no one behind. I will begin by contextualizing and talking about the Leave No One Behind framework. Then we will examine how an intersectional approach can be implemented. And lastly, how Indigenous leadership can play a pivotal role in ensuring that we leave no one behind. In September 2015, United Nations and its 193 member countries, including Canada, adopted 17 interconnected and interdependent Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. The SDGs are a plan of action for the global community to achieve peace and prosperity for people and planet, especially through partnerships. These goals identify key factors that contribute to equity, social impact and cohesion, and sustainability to build a just, inclusive, and sustainable society. An important pledge to achieve the SDGs is to ensure that we leave no one behind. The framework for leaving no one behind looks at 5 factors that contribute to people being left behind and the questions we must ask. Starting with discrimination, which occurs based on one or more aspects of a person's or group's identity. This includes, but is not limited to, gender, age, ethnicity, and disability. We can examine if this discrimination exists by examining what biases and exclusion community members face based on one or more aspects of their identity. The second factor, which is geography, focuses on people facing vulnerability and inequity based on where they live. We examine this factor by asking who in the community is experiencing isolation or lack access to transportation or internet based on where they live. The third factor looks at the socioeconomic status. Community members get left behind when they lack the opportunities and capabilities to earn an adequate income and are unable to fully and equitably participate in the economy and the community. We can examine this factor by asking who in the community faces deprivations or disadvantages in terms of income, access to services, access to education and literacy. Asking how can the community alleviate some of these hardships. Asking if different levels of governments provide services or resources to minimize the inequity gap. The fourth factor is governance, which focuses on how members of the community are affected by policies, especially when they are knowingly or unknowingly exclusive, inequitable, unresponsive, or discriminatory. We examine this factor by asking who is affected by policies and processes, who is unable to meaningfully participate in the decisions that impact them. The fifth factor looks at shocks and fragility. People get left behind when they are vulnerable to risks related to displacement, natural hazards, health emergencies, economic downturns, and other shocks. We can examine this factor by asking who in the community is more exposed and vulnerable to setbacks due to these shocks or unexpected fragile situations. A person or a group could be left behind due to disadvantages related to only one of the 5 factors described here. However, more often, most of the community members who are left behind face intersectionality of these factors and compounding disadvantages and hardships. So, what do we need to do to ensure that we leave no one behind? Here, we use an intersectional approach to examine the root causes of why community members are being left behind. The questions I have mentioned can be used to collect disaggregated data to gain a more in-depth understanding of how and where the 5 factors intersect and why community members are being left behind. Secondly, we can empower those who are being left behind. We can enable and empower folks on the margins by ensuring their meaningful participation in decision-making and establishing safe and inclusive processes. Thirdly, Different levels of governments and other organizations can enact policies to confront the factors that leave people behind. Implement policies and processes that are based on community feedback, people-centered data, and focused on equity. We can ensure that the governance structures and organizations are responsive, inclusive, and representative of their community, and transparent and accountable. So far, we have examined the Leave No One Behind framework and looked at the intersectional approach that calls sorry, can you still hear me? Sorry about that. All of community effort. If we are to move forward towards a just, inclusive, and sustainable society. So next, we look at Indigenous leadership and one of the ways it can contribute to ensuring that we leave no one behind. Indigenous leadership is informed by Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing. This comprises of knowledge passed down generation to generation for millennia. Here, I would like to submit to you that there is an extension to the historical knowledge, and that is the knowledge that is being accumulated right now by the current generations based on the lived experiences, and that this knowledge is as pivotal in informing the Indigenous leadership as the one passed down by the ancestors. Let me briefly describe Dr. Tara J. Yoso's model of cultural capital and community cultural wealth, and make the connection that the resilience and the lived experiences of the current Indigenous generations, especially as we pass through the health emergency and social shifts, can inform the Indigenous leadership and serve as a beacon to the rest of the society. Dr. Yoso describes community cultural wealth that we inherit from our elders as comprised of 6 different forms of capital, starting with aspirational capital, which is the ability to maintain hopes and dreams for the future, even in the darkest of times. It is the courage to dream and the audacity of hope for a better future for our next generation, even when it seems impossible. Linguistic capital are social and communication skills that come from understanding and or speaking more than one language. It is the ability to have a cross-cultural awareness and the ability to look at the world through multiple lenses. Family is where we learn about our history, traditions, and culture, and accumulate familial capital. Strong familial ties with our immediate and extended family instills in us the meaning and value of community. Social capital can be understood as networks of people and community resources. It can be other community members and social contacts who support us and help us navigate through society's institutions. For example, seeing a doctor who belongs to our community, who will provide culturally informed care while helping us navigate the healthcare system. This leads us to navigational capital, which refers to skills required to maneuver institutions, especially the ones not designed with the marginalized communities in mind. For example, think back to your high school experience. Did you use your social capital to find out what classes were easy to take, which were the quote unquote fun teachers? And lastly, resistant capital refers to those knowledges and skills fostered through resisting and opposing people and institutions of authority to stand up against injustice. It is the lessons learned about which battles to pick and when to be strategic and when to be tactical to ensure highest impact. Community cultural wealth of the current generations can provide an important additional lens to Indigenous knowledge. It encompasses experiences, skills, resourcefulness earned through adversity and accumulated through generosity. It demonstrates perseverance, selflessness, reciprocity in the face of unbearable systemic oppression, racism, and inhumane capitalism, including the experiences of current generations, provides unique and relatable knowledge to inform Indigenous leadership. In the last few minutes, we have examined the Leave No One Behind framework, looked at how an intersectional approach can help us chart a new course for the future, and how Indigenous leadership, informed by ancient and current Indigenous knowledge, can provide invaluable guidance and a beacon of hope and solidarity. It is important to note here that empathy is the glue that holds us together. For those of us who live on the margins, we have seen what happens when the pendulum swings to one side. We don't need to see it swing to the other side. Our goal should be to reach equilibrium, that is, equity and equality with respect for everyone's human rights. Let me leave you with one last thought. The Sustainable Development Goals envision a world that does not exist yet, in order to be a society we have never been before. We should expect to do things we have never done before. Thank you for your time and attention. Back to you, Shaylin.
Wow. Chimigwech, thank you so much, S, for your thought-provoking and educational words and presentation. Wow. I really appreciated the invitation to look inwards and at our own lives to see the capital that we have already and to reclaim that power and use it to empower others in this work of leaving no one behind. Chimigwech, thank you. Next up, we have Jada Ponce, Kichisibi Anishinaabe from Ardok Algonquin First Nation, and currently working at TRAC's youth program with the Oshkwazin Indigenous Youth Leadership Team. Chimigwech for joining us, Jada. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and we'll put your presentation up right now. And I invite you to take the floor. Where's the play button? Oh, got it. Okay. Miigwech, Jada.
Okay, yes. Thank you for that introduction. I would like to introduce myself a little bit more. So actually, next slide. Well, one slide back. It's okay. Anin, Asignakwe, Anin Bojo, Asignakwe Indigenous cause, Nogojiwanong and Donjaba, Mishi Kendall Dam. Hi, my name is Jada Ponce. My spirit name is Red-Winged Blackbird Woman, so that's why I got a blackbird over there. I'm from Ardok Algonquin First Nation, as Shaylin said. Today I was asked here to talk about the importance of engaging Indigenous youth and also the importance of creating sustainable space for Indigenous youth to grow and flourish as participants and future leaders. And I feel there's no better way to do this than to first start with a little story of my own as an Indigenous youth growing up. So next slide. So growing up as an Indigenous youth, I kind of felt a little bit out of place. For me, the place that I felt a lot of acceptance was my Anishinaabe classroom, where there was many Indigenous youth. There was the teachers, and we would share our knowledge and we would joke, and it wasn't odd to talk about smudging, drumming, or fancy shawl. I remember one of my first Anishinaabe classrooms was a portable, kind of just like this. It was very small, although it wasn't as nice as this one. It was much dirtier, I swear. Where was I? Oh, yes. So my first classroom was a portable. And so basically what we'd have to do is we'd walk from the nice comfy school, put on our shoes, switch out our outdoor shoes or switch our indoor shoes from our outdoor shoes, and then switch out again to go into the portable. And sometimes we keep our coat on because it was kind of chilly in there, but it was a small space, but it was a safe space and a space I cherished. Although we would complain a little bit. We'd be like, hey, why it's so cold in here? We make jokes. But every year my teacher, he would apply to ask for his own classroom inside the school. And one year they did some renovations, and they were having some classrooms, and they said, hey, do you want one of these classrooms? He said yes. And they asked, okay, well, when we're making it, is there anything you'd like in this classroom? And he said, I'd like a medicine wheel on the floor to do some teachings with my class. And so they heard that and they said, okay. And that was it. So they didn't ask him anything after that. So then it came the day to move in to the classroom. So of course, once we got in there, the first hot buzz topic was the classroom itself and how it looked, and the medicine wheel, most importantly. So a lot of us young ones, we looked around and we were like, wow, that's so awesome. We were really happy about it, but we were looking at it, we weren't sure, like something felt like a little off. And when we said that, our teacher said, well, it looks like they put in the wrong colors for our territory. So what they had done was they just kind of Googled a medicine wheel, most likely, and put it on the floor, and there it was. So it's not like it was painted there. It was like floored in. So there was no going back after that. And I kind of wanted to tell that story just to kind of talk about how important creating those understanding and relationships with your Indigenous people in your area is. And like, especially with schools too, because even though, of course, they were accommodating the medicine wheel, maybe if they had a little more understanding of like the fact that the colors can be different, then we would have been a little more happy with it. Because I swear every time he was like, oh, that's that medicine wheel again, he'd always make a joke about it. Yes. So now we can move to the next slide. And so talking about teachers and mentors and honestly strong leaders, which were like elders, aunties, uncles, people who helped me feel in place in a world sometimes where I didn't feel like I fit in. They helped create these places and made me feel fit in these places and valued. And I felt encouraged through their teachings. I became involved in volunteering for like many events and participating in them at a very young age. So the Indigenous Women's Symposium, I sold some books there, and I did cleanup, and would also participate in just the different teachings, big drum socials, Indigenous youth programming. So my community, that one picture on the bottom is actually a young picture of me. And I would do different rock painting with the really young kids who are like 2 years old, 4 years old. And basically we have this camp that we run at Bon Echo Park. And we have an agreement where we provide traditional knowledge for the territory where our ancestors were before. And we kind of educate the people around the park and give them some teaching. So once we've done strawberry programming, we've done like water ceremonies, things like that. And I would hold the water, I would hand out the strawberry juice, things like that. And that really helped me gain my skills. So we can move to the next slide. And so with those skills, I was able to get one of my first jobs, which was at the Humber Indigenous Camp Choice, which basically we take grade 7s and 8s Indigenous youth from their communities and we bring them to Humber, and then we would kind of mentor them and show them the different kinds of paths they could follow. So and so if you look at that bottom picture with my team over there, that was one year that we took a group photo. So a lot of my group members were Indigenous youth as well. So we were all Indigenous on there. And so they really could look at themselves and see that there were so many paths to life, because a lot of people on my team, they had either gone to school for like sports, some of them had gone to school for fashion, law. There was all sorts of like, you know, we had a very good diverse team of both male and female. And it was awesome. And also we brought in people as well. So we would bring in people, like once we brought in DJ Shub to show them about DJing, which is really cool. That's what that top one is. That's DJ Shub. And then we brought in comedians and had a comedy night and had them participate too if they wanted to do some jokes and they would learn. And also even like forensic science. So just showing them all these programs, all the places that they could go for resources, and really just giving them an introduction. And for me, from doing those things and participating to getting to facilitate, I learned so much, and seeing the impact on those youth was one of those things. So we can go to the next slide. Now I got another very short story here. So one year I was working with a group of young men, and I was teaching them how to make a drum. And one had finished faster than the other. And once he had got it, I saw him start to like encourage his peers, and like I had encouraged him as well. So what I mean is, like, in this situation where I was kind of not able to help him because there was like a group of 15 students I was running around, he had modeled the skills that I had showed him, and he was like showing so many leadership skills, and like he had been really shy at the beginning as well. And to see him like putting himself out there with another youth that he hadn't met before, and trying to teach him something, it like showed me the importance of what I was doing. Like I was passing on those skills that my mentors had taught me, and seeing him just put those in there really showed me the importance of it, creating confidence in them, making them feel safe with their identity, that like, yeah, being Indigenous is fine in these spaces, and it's even a benefit, you know. And just seeing that leadership really made me feel proud. So we can move to the next slide. So that kind of leads me to my current position, which is on the tracks team with the Nogojiwanong in the Nogojiwanong development and delivery position. And just to briefly explain that, we work with grades 9 to 12. And kind of my job is to connect them with local knowledge keepers, different organizations, and create really amazing programming for them that has Indigenous knowledge and also that Western knowledge, and bringing them together, and just creating these safe spaces and like community kind of for them to feel like, oh, this is fun. I want to come back and do this again. And I'm learning some really cool things. So we can go to the next slide. So this is some of the program that we have here, or programs, should I say. We have the activism and leadership, food Indigenous sovereignty, traditional beading. Right now we're making mitts, so we have like some people come in sometimes, and we've even done moccasin workshops. And oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Like even like we were just started just yesterday. Just seeing those youth, like some of them who were quiet at first, just wanting to talk even in an online setting, just really encourages to see that they are feeling safe to laugh and, you know, talk with us. And normally we'd like to do it on the land, but in COVID times, obviously not super accessible, but it's been going super well. And I can also leave in the chat some of our our site for our programming, because we also do the O&E team does young youth, in kindergarten and up, and then we do the high schoolers. But yeah, this is kind of some of the programming we're doing. And so we can move to the next slide here. So I just kind of wanted to say that it's just so important to have those communities, right? And having these amazing opportunities at a time like this, just to, come together and create connections with knowledge keepers, create connections with peers, and just, get away from that daily routine right now with COVID is just so important and integral, I think. And these kinds of programs really help Indigenous youth, and it's really helped me. And I'm so grateful for all the opportunities I've been given in my life to be able to do all these sorts of programming and feel like I have a place. And now I'm doing this, and it gave me so many great skills. So I just want to say, here, let's go to the next slide here. A big chimigwech to everyone who's here listening, and also all the speakers here, and to everyone who helped run this event. It's amazing. I was here in the first session. It was so good. So chimigwech for hearing me speak, and chimigwech gop is in doyeg.
Chimegwech Jada, for sharing those beautiful stories and your knowledge and your work with us. It was a really pleasure to hear you speak, and a privilege to learn about what you've done and to make sure that youth voices are not left behind, because we are not just the leaders of tomorrow, but we have a place in this work now, and engaging Indigenous youth and all youth is so important, but particularly Indigenous youth, especially because of how we historically have been treated. So it's very important that we make space for those voices. So chimigwech. And next, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Alan Corbier to speak with us. He's a well-respected Anishinaabe historian and teacher from Michigan First Nation on Manitoulin Island, and an assistant professor in the Department of History at York University. It's an honor to have you with us this evening, Dr. Allen, and I invite you to please take the floor. Miigwech. Before we wrap up for this evening. So if anyone has any questions for any of our speakers, you feel free to, sorry, somebody just put the chat before we move into questions. Haley just put in the correct link for the resource on treaties. So chimigwech for doing that, Haley. So yeah, if anybody has any questions for our speakers, please feel free to put that in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them with your voice. Yeah, we have some time for that. Julie has your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Thanks, Shay, and chimigwech to all the speakers. I'm thinking about this beautiful invitation that I think has been given to us this evening in thinking about the importance of, youth leadership and engagement, how we can imagine this, new future together. And Alan, with your words, thinking about how beautiful it would be to have a name that has a story, that has teachings to understand our place in the world, and how much ease that would, I think, bring us as people, reducing, I think, a lot of the anxiety and disruption, right, of our relationship with, each other and Mother Earth and all of creation. So I'm going to take away the invitation to, sort of discover some of that, I think, for myself. And just really grateful to be here and to be sharing this evening with all of you. Thank you.
Beautiful. And I learned a lot tonight. I learned so much. I'm just so grateful for everything that everyone shared. Chi-miigwech for your presentation, and Jada for yours, and Dr. Allen. And since we are at 8:30, I will just hand things right over to you, Ann Taylor, to end us in a good way to close this session. Chi-miigwech, Ann.